I denounce anybody who talk about Black History Month and all them can talk about the slavery, you know. I denounce that. You know, see it. If we're talking about history, Black History Month, everybody have them contribution. Everybody have them contribution to world history. We as African people must understand and know what contribution we make in that world history. So nobody can come tell me about Black History Month is for Americans. Because the same boat that carry black people go America is the same boat that carry them come to Jamaica. It's just that them drop off some at Plymouth Rock and drop off some in a Kingston and at these places. So the guy don't come tell me come like him want to separate the whole context. You know, see, we have to understand the contribution. Just like how we know the contribution made by Europeans to world history, we have to understand what is the contribution that was made by African people in world history. And black history, all black history is saying, look here, make we look on the contribution that was made and say, oh, this contribution can be made relevant to our present situation. That is all it is saying. You know, see it. Black history is about reflecting on the contribution that African people made to world history in order to put it into its perspective and to see how we can best use that historical knowledge to further ourselves. Knowing that in our time before slavery, we were scientifically, technologically advanced, that we could go into Europe and share knowledge with Europeans. Because that is written in history. And if these guys don't know that before slavery, Africans was going into Europe to share knowledge in Europe. That is what we were doing. Until slavery came and halt the progress of African technologically, socially, politically, and historically. Slavery is that part of history that halt the progress of Africa. And then the underdevelopment of Africa come through economic capitalism. So we are saying now that we are moving now into, we are going back to the future. Going back to the future now, where we are now looking on future things that will happen and saying now that we are going to draw from our past, the greatness that is us, to now reconcile ourselves with world history by knowing that we is part of that human family. We are part of that human family that has contributed a lot, but it was wiped out of our psyche by 400 and odd years of the most devastating cruelty that man has known and has perpetrated against man, and that is chattel slavery. So we're not delving on slavery, but we want to tell you that slavery have a lot to do with where we are today as a people and how we think as a people. And the only way we're going to come out of that slavery mentality is to understand that we had a time before that. We have a time before slavery. That is the only way we're going to come out of it. If we keep delving that 400 years in slavery and feel that is it. No, we had a time before that. Or as a matter of fact, we had thousands of years of high technological advancement. That is why they could have come look on you and tell you say the Egyptians wasn't black. Because they don't want to make sure you say the African black people contributed to world history. That even today, the pyramids that are built, because they can't understand how the pyramids was built. Two things. To deny the power of the black people. There's two things them do about the pyramids. One, because they can't understand it, them tell you say spaceman make it. That's the first thing them tell you. Boy, since it's not white people make it, it could black people make it. So it must space people make it. Two, if it's Egyptians make it, them wasn't black. That is the two things. That is the basis of them argument, you know. That is the basis, and them have black people who fall prey to these things. Them have black people who tell you say, well, you know, it's some extraterrestrial being come down, come build the pyramid them. And then if them not tell that, them say, oh, but the Egyptians weren't really black. Because them don't want to show you that black people make a contribution to world history through science and technology. Because them have us to believe that we're done with sports and singers. We are only sports people and singers. You see it? Because the opportunities that were supposed to be there is not there now. And we have to struggle for those opportunities. So we want to touch, if it's even half hour, Ivan van Sertima to really clarify a lot of things that we have been saying. And Ivan van Sertima is a scientist. Ivan van Sertima talking about the African presence in world history. And there's some serious thing the man has talked about, you know. I mean, like, this is scientific anthropological evidences that the man talking about now. This is not a little Rastaman from Jamaica talk. So I don't know if these guys can challenge what this man has said, because as the man say, he was asked to come and commission to rewrite history, you know, reevaluate what certain things supposed to be factual or fiction in history. But there's some serious thing I'm talking about. Even the hieroglyphic scripts, you know, there were much scripts exist in Africa before it even exists in Europe, you know. And we know that the Ethiopians, the Nubians were Ethiopians because the Nubians occupied Egypt. Civilization went into Egypt by way of Nubia. The original Egyptians were Nubians, black African people. Not where they might tell you about say black African Egyptians wasn't black. Egyptians was black, Jesse black people. Just like when they talk about Bantu people. You have mixtures of Bantus in Egypt. So, it's not one type of people was in Egypt. And then you have a set of people named the Ixos who invade Egypt. And then we can start to dismantle up the dynasties of the pharaohs, the dynasty of Egyptian reality. But there was a civilization even in Egypt before the Pharaoh dynasty. Before the Pharaoh dynasty. When I'm saying about 3,000 years of Pharaoh, 3,000 years BC of Pharaoh dynasties. Right? But before that, you did have civilization existing in Egypt. Right? And this civilization, these people who started people Egypt came out of Nubia. And these Nubians came out of geographically what is now called Ethiopia. Why we have said that now? We have said this to say this, that when we look at what Ivan van Sertima is talking about, can you imagine if they was teaching these things in schools? Can you imagine if we had known these things, how important it would be for us to have a more higher esteem of ourselves based upon our cultural past, our historical past? Now that the anthropologists and the archaeologists is finding evidence of African presence in all of these countries, in Japan, in China, in Europe, you know, the African presence is so dominant even in the Americas here, by way of, you know, 1,000 years before Columbus came here, the Africans was coming across the Atlantic Ocean. You know, now that we know all these things, now that we know that history is not totally white, but history is also African also Asiatic also. So every race of people has contributed to the development or underdevelopment of the world. But obviously we only know of the European civilization and its development in world history. Now that we know these things, it is incumbent on us to use this knowledge to further our understanding of what life is supposed to be based upon an African-centered perspective. That is what the knowledge is all about. The Egypt of today, occupied right now by the people them who call themselves Egyptians, is not the same type that occupied Egypt at the time of the pyramids. The man is showing you now that it is categorically proven by the melanin in these pharaohs that that period of Egypt was black Africans. I want to play it again. I want to play it again, you know, because we know that. We know that. When the man tell you now, say, the Egyptians wasn't really black as such. What period of Egyptian history I'm talking about? Because Egyptian history get cut off by an invasion. There was a time when Egypt was invaded. But the man I show you now of the type of Africans that build Egypt is Ethiopian, Nubian Africans that build Egypt. Ethiopian, Nubian Africans build Egypt. That is the type where we are talking about. Black Africans who build the pyramids, who were the pharaohs in Egypt. What these guys don't know. They're going to run up their mouth about things that they don't know about. We are not saying that all of Egypt of every time was black, because we understand the invasions that take place. But we are saying that to say that is not black people build the pyramids, you know, because you don't want to accept that there was a time when black people, black African, Ethiopian, Nubian, Egyptian people build the pyramid. You know, see, them don't want to tell you that. Them tell you about Egypt after the invasion. You know, see, after the invasion, we crumble the dynasties of the Egyptians, that is, of the Pharaoh. That is what them tell you about. Just like how them tell you about Jamaican people. You know, see, if a cow born in a pig pen and don't know same as a cow, because them get oriented in a pig pen, because him don't know same as a cow, is not a cow. Eh? Tell me that. Because a cow born where him not supposed to born, and him don't know that him is a cow, it means him is not a cow. Because Ashanti, same as Ashanti, and him don't know of, make we say, the Zulus, or him don't know of, make we say, the Ethiopians. Because the Ashanti don't know the presence of Ethiopians, or the presence of, it means him is not an African. Because him don't know of them presence. When we know say Africa is a continent, Africa is a continent, not a country. Learn that the first thing you have to understand. You have to know to separate a country from a continent. That's like how we know, say, Germans, we know that the French, we know that the Finnish, we know that the Swiss, we know that all of these people, Italians, are Europeans. But we talk by them, by their country, their nationality is German. But we know that on a broader level, what connect the Germans, what connect the French, what connect the Italians, the Greek, the Finnish, and all these people is that the whole of them is Europeans. So, what connect the Ghanaians? What connect the Nigerians? What connect the Ethiopians? What connect the Egyptians? Is that the whole of them is African. And we's part of that. We's part of that. I don't know descendant of Africa, you know. I am African, I know descendant. I know descend from somebody, you know. I am the somebody.
It's important, therefore, to understand what periods are African. Because Africa was invaded very early. It's not only by the later Western Europeans who invaded Western and Northern and Eastern Africa, but you have invasions occurring in Egypt. The dawn period is clearly Africa. There is absolutely no doubt. The Pyramid Age is an African age. The science of mummification, the science of the pyramids, the extraordinary astronomy and mathematics associated with those pyramids spring out of the Ethiopian-Egyptian world, which at that time is dominated by black Africans.
Yes, at that part that we are talking about. That part there we are talking about. No doubt, according to archaeological, anthropological, and scientific evidence, there is no doubt that the Pyramid Age in Egypt was black, Nubian, Ethiopian, African period. No doubt. And we know the Exodus come across, and we know that you start to have a division in Egyptian realities now. That is why now when we talk about like Israel now, we have to understand who is Israel. Israel is not a race of people. Israel is a nation of people. It's a whole heap of people come together to make the nation of Israel. You know, see, Israel is not a pure, what would I call a pure set of people. Like we have like the Nubians descended from Ethiopians. And after the Nubians, Ethiopians, you have the Arab invasion. The Arab invasion of Africa changed the face of Africa. The Arab invasion of Africa changed the face of Africa. Because this is the time now when a whole heap of slavery start, whole heap of things start happening in Africa.
In terms of the study of mummies, Sheikh Anta Diop invented a chemical process which could test melanin in the skin of mummies, and in the Museum of Man, all the mummies tested with that chemical process, which is now accepted in the United States, showed a level of melanin that clearly established those are not European types. The Pyramid Age, therefore, is an African age. The science of mummification, the science of the pyramid, the extraordinary astronomy and mathematics associated with those pyramids spring out of the Ethiopian-Egyptian world, which at that time is dominated by black Africans. This did not remain so for all time. You can find with great clarity in the 18th and 19th dynasties, what I call the Noon dynasties, the African type dominating again is very clear. Whether you look at Queen Tai or King Tut or Akhenaten and all of the Hatshepsut and these people, you see the African type very powerful.
You know, we just play that tape in light of what is taking place right now, you know, with certain arguments and reasoning. You know, to confound these arguments and reasoning, we have to play these kind of tapes for the people. What we want to say also is that when we look on these historical references, we know that man started to even migrate across, even reaching to the West African coast, you know, because now man is studying now the languages of the Akan and the Asante people and relating it to Egyptian language. There's a connection between the languages that is in Ghana and the Egyptian languages. Obviously, there was a migration of people right across to where we have now Ghana, Mali. Mali, as you know, is housing that place them called Timbuktu, where your grandmother used to say, well, lick your family to Timbuktu. And we never know that Timbuktu was a real place. As a matter of fact, the first university was built in Timbuktu. You know, so we have to know these things. It's just a part of history. It's an original history. It's not a part of nothing else more than just knowing history. Them teach you history at school and then make you know, say, history will play a great part in your development. So we understand that, and we are saying, no, make us teach the other side of history. Let us teach what is our history as a people. In Jamaica, you have different kind of people. You have Chinese, you have Jews, you have Syrians, you have Africans, you have, you know, Indians. All of these people is coming from a heritage historically that present their case in what they would see as their part that they play in the development of human history. We are just saying that from the 1st of February to the 28th of February, this year is the 29th of February, we as African people will take this time to reflect on what the contribution is by African people through the ages. Check the man where you just hear named Ivan van Sertima. Blacks in Science. You have books like Blacks in Science. They came before Columbus. Black women in Antiquity. Egypt Revisited. African presence in Europe. African presence in Asia. All of these books written by this man we call Ivan van Sertima. We have said that these men are men who we can trust with history, because they are called upon also to rewrite history based upon the findings, the scientific evidence that they bring to the world right now. These are not just men who are just talking because them is rhetoric, because them is black nationalists, because them is black advocates. These are not men like that. These are men who is looking for evidence and proof that there's no worth in being African and that there is reality in the truth that Africa is the cradle of civilization. That is what it is all about. Africa, the cradle of civilization.